The autumn sun cast golden streaks through the trees as I drove down Peachtree Street, my heart practically singing with joy. In the passenger seat beside me sat 3 shopping bags filled with the most beautiful baby items I'd found at the boutique. Soft yellow onesies, because we didn't know the gender yet, a handmade quilt my sister had sewn, and a sterling silver rattle that had been passed down through 3 generations of our family. My name is Dorothy Jenkins, and at 58 years old, I was about to become a grandmother for the first time. My son Marcus and his wife, Simone, had announced the pregnancy 3 months ago, and I'd been counting down the days ever since. As a retired school principal, I'd spent my entire career nurturing other people's children. Now, finally, I would have a grandchild of my own to spoil, to love, to pass down the stories and traditions of our family. The drive to their townhouse in the historic West End neighborhood of Atlanta took 20 minutes. I'd made this drive countless times since Marcus bought the place 2 years ago, right after he'd gotten his promotion at the law firm. My baby boy, now 32 years old, had done so well for himself. Harvard Law School, a position at one of the most prestigious Black-owned firms in the South, and a beautiful wife who worked as a marketing executive, or so I thought. I pulled into their driveway at 2:47 p.m., earlier than expected. I'd told Simone I'd arrive around 4, but the boutique owner had finished the monogramming on the quilt sooner than anticipated. I figured surprising them would be fine. After all, what pregnant daughter-in-law wouldn't want to see her mother-in-law bearing gifts for the baby? Using the key Marcus had given me for emergencies, I let myself in through the front door. "Simone, Marcus?" I called out, but silence greeted me. Marcus's car wasn't in the driveway, so he must still be at work. But Simone's silver Mercedes sat parked on the street. Maybe she was resting. Pregnancy could be exhausting, especially in the second trimester. I decided to leave the gifts in the nursery, the spare bedroom they'd started converting last month. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear water running somewhere upstairs. The bathroom, perhaps. I walked quietly, not wanting to startle Simone if she was in the middle of her afternoon routine. The nursery door was ajar, and I pushed it open with my hip, balancing the bags in my arms. The room was coming along beautifully. Soft gray walls, white furniture, and a gorgeous crib that Marcus had assembled himself. I set the bags down by the changing table and stood there for a moment, imagining my grandchild sleeping peacefully in that crib, imagining myself rocking the baby to sleep while humming the same lullabies I'd sung to Marcus. That's when I heard voices, not from the bathroom, but from the master bedroom down the hall. Simone's voice and a man's voice. Not Marcus's deep baritone, but something lighter, younger. My stomach clenched. Every instinct told me to leave, to walk back down those stairs and pretend I'd never heard anything. But my feet carried me forward, toward that partially open door, toward the sound of my daughter-in-law's laughter mingling with a stranger's voice. Through the crack in the door, I could see into their bedroom. What I saw made my blood run cold. Simone stood in front of the full-length mirror, wearing nothing but her underwear and a bra. And there, on the bed behind her, sat a flesh-colored silicone belly, a prosthetic pregnancy belly. Next to her stood a young man, maybe 25 years old, his hand on her actual flat stomach, both of them laughing. "I can't believe we've pulled this off for 3 months, Simone was saying, running her hands over her real stomach. "Your mother literally bought the whole act." "Baby, you're a genius," the young man said, pulling her close. "Once we get that life insurance money, we're set for life." The world tilted beneath my feet. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself, and in doing so, knocked against the door. It swung open wider with a loud creak. Simone's head whipped around, her eyes meeting mine. For a split second, time froze. I saw the color drain from her face, saw the young man's confusion turn to panic, saw the fake belly lying on the bed like evidence at a crime scene. "Mrs. Jenkins," Simone started, but I was already backing away, my hand pressed to my chest where my heart threatened to break through my ribcage. "Dorothy, wait, let me explain." But I was already running down the stairs, my 60-year-old knees protesting with every step. I heard Simone scrambling behind me, probably throwing on a robe, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had to get out of that house, away from the lies, away from the betrayal that was too enormous for my mind to comprehend. I made it to my car, fumbling with my keys. Simone burst through the front door, now wrapped in a silk robe, running barefoot down the driveway. "Mrs. Jenkins, please. It's not what you think." I finally got the key in the ignition. "Not what I think," I screamed through the closed window, tears streaming down my face. "You're not pregnant. You're having an affair. You're plotting something with that boy. Please, just let me explain. Don't tell Marcus, please." But I was already backing out of the driveway, nearly hitting a mailbox in my panic. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Simone standing in the middle of the street, her face twisted in desperation. I drove for 3 blocks before I had to pull over, because I was crying so hard I couldn't see the road. I sat there, in my car, shaking, the shopping bags in the passenger seat mocking me with their innocent yellow and white wrapping paper. There was no baby. There was no grandchild. Everything was a lie. I sat in that parking lot for 37 minutes, trying to process what I'd seen. My phone buzzed continuously. Simone, calling, texting, begging me to listen, to not tell Marcus, to give her a chance to explain. I turned the phone to silent and stared at the steering wheel, my mind racing through the past 3 months. The announcement had come at Sunday dinner, right here in Atlanta, at my house. Marcus and Simone had arrived with flowers and champagne, their faces glowing with excitement. "Mom," Marcus had said, his eyes bright with tears, "you're going to be a grandmother. Simone's pregnant." I'd cried then too, but those were tears of joy. I'd embraced Simone, welcoming her fully into our family in a way I hadn't quite managed in the 2 years since they'd married. I'd always felt she was a bit cold, a bit too focused on status and money, but I kept those feelings to myself. Marcus loved her, and that was what mattered. Or so I'd thought. Now, replaying that moment, I saw it differently. Simone's smile had been perfect, too perfect. The way she'd placed her hand protectively over her still flat stomach, the way she'd talked about being 8 weeks along, the way she'd already picked out names. It had all been a performance. But why? What had that man said about life insurance money? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus calling. My heart lurched. Did he already know? Had Simone told him some twisted version of events? I answered with trembling fingers. "Marcus? Mom? Hey, I was just thinking about you. How's your day going?" His voice was so normal, so unsuspecting. He didn't know. Simone hadn't told him yet. "Baby, I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cracking. "Can you come to my house? Now?" "Mom, what's wrong? You sound upset." "Please, Marcus, just come home, to my house. Don't go to your place first. Come straight here." There was a pause. "Okay, Mom, I'm leaving the office now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Are you okay? Should I call an ambulance?" No, just come. Please." I hung up and started driving toward my house in Cascade Heights, the same house where Marcus had grown up, where his father and I had raised him with love and faith and values that I thought we'd instilled deep in his soul. His father, Robert, had died 6 years ago from a heart attack, never getting to see his son graduate from law school, never getting to see him married, and now, never getting to know that the grandchild we dreamed of was nothing but an elaborate lie. Maybe that was a mercy. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands had stopped shaking, but my mind was still reeling. I went inside and made tea, needing something to do with my hands while I waited. The house felt too quiet, filled with the ghosts of better times. Marcus's graduation photos on the mantel, Robert's reading chair by the window, the family Bible on the coffee table. Marcus arrived 18 minutes later, bursting through the front door with panic on his face. "Mom, what happened? Are you sick?" I stood there in the kitchen doorway, looking at my son, my beautiful, intelligent, trusting son, and felt my heart break all over again. How do you tell your child that his whole life is a lie, that the woman he loves has betrayed him in the most fundamental way? "Sit down, baby," I said softly. "You're scaring me. Just tell me what's wrong." "Marcus, please, sit down." He sat on the edge of the sofa, his lawyer's suit still crisp despite the late hour, his tie slightly loosened. He looked so much like his father in that moment that it took my breath away. I sat across from him and took his hands in mine. "I went to your house today, earlier than I'd told Simone I'd be coming. I had gifts for the baby, and I wanted to surprise you both." Marcus smiled slightly. "That's so sweet, Mom. But what?" "Simone isn't pregnant, Marcus." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Marcus's smile faded into confusion. "What?" "Mom, that doesn't make sense. We've had appointments. We've heard the heartbeat. I've seen the ultrasound pictures. I walked into your bedroom this afternoon, and I saw Simone standing there with a young man I've never seen before. And Marcus," I squeezed his hands tighter. "She was removing a fake pregnancy belly, a prosthetic. She's been faking the entire thing." Marcus pulled his hands away and stood up, pacing to the window. No, that's impossible. You must have seen something else. Maybe it was, I don't know, some kind of support garment that pregnant women wear? Baby, I know what I saw, and I heard them talking about pulling off a lie, about life insurance money." Marcus spun around, his face flushed. "Life insurance? What are you talking about?" "I don't know exactly, but that's what the young man said. Something about getting life insurance money and being set for life." For a long moment, Marcus just stared at me, his brilliant legal mind trying to find a logical explanation, trying to defend his wife, trying to make sense of the senseless. Then, slowly, his face began to change. The denial cracked, and beneath it, I could see realization dawning. "The life insurance," he whispered. "She asked me to increase my life insurance policy 2 months ago, said it was responsible with the baby coming. She wanted me to add her as the primary beneficiary for $2 million. My blood ran cold. "Did you?" "I signed the papers last week." Marcus was out the door before I could stop him, his car screeching out of my driveway like a man possessed. I called after him, begging him to wait, to think, to not confront Simone alone when she was clearly involved in something dangerous. But he was gone, and I was left standing on my porch with my heart in my throat. I called my brother, James, who'd been a detective with the Atlanta Police Department for 30 years before retiring. If anyone could make sense of this nightmare, it was him. "Dorothy, it's past 6 o'clock. What's wrong?" I told him everything. The fake belly, the strange man, the conversation about life insurance money, Marcus's revelation about the policy. James listened without interrupting, his detective's mind already piecing together the puzzle. "Don't move," he said when I finished. "I'm coming over. And Dorothy, call Marcus, tell him to come back to your house immediately and not to confront Simone until we figure out what's going on. If this is what I think it is, he could be in serious danger. What do you think it is? Insurance fraud, possibly. Or worse, much worse. Call him. Now." I tried Marcus's phone 7 times, but each call went straight to voicemail. James arrived within 20 minutes, and we drove together to Marcus and Simone's townhouse. The whole drive there, James explained what he suspected. It's a common scam, actually. Not the fake pregnancy part. That's creative, but the rest of it follows a pattern. Woman marries well-off man, convinces him to take out a large life insurance policy with her as beneficiary, then arranges for him to die in what looks like an accident. The pregnancy angle is brilliant because it gives her a rock-solid reason for the husband to increase his coverage and makes her look sympathetic after his death. "You think she's planning to kill Marcus?" My voice was barely a whisper. "I think we need to find your son and make sure he's safe. Then we need to figure out who that young man is and what exactly they're planning." When we arrived at the townhouse, both Marcus's and Simone's cars were in the driveway. The house was lit up, and through the front window, we could see shadows moving around. James made me wait in the car while he approached the front door. I watched him knock, then knock again. Finally, the door opened, and Simone appeared, now fully dressed in yoga pants and a loose sweater. No pregnancy belly in sight. From the car, I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see Simone's body language. Defensive, arms crossed, shaking her head. James held up his phone, showing her something on the screen. Her face went pale. Then Marcus appeared behind her, and my heart leaped. He was safe. He was alive. James gestured for me to come inside, and I practically ran up the walkway. As soon as I entered the house, Marcus pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. "You were right. About everything." We sat in their living room, the same living room where I'd celebrated Christmas with them, where we'd toasted Simone's birthday, where they'd announced the fake pregnancy. Now it felt like hostile territory. Simone sat on the love seat, her face streaked with tears, while Marcus sat as far from her as possible, his jaw clenched tight. James stood by the fireplace, his phone in his hand. "Start talking," James said to Simone, "and don't bother lying. I've already run a background check on you, and it's fascinating reading." Simone's head snapped up. "You can't do that. That's illegal. I'm a retired police officer with connections, and your husband has a right to know who he's really married to. So let's start with your real name, because Simone Marie Collins, isn't it, is it?" Marcus's head whipped toward his wife. What is he talking about? Simone's tears stopped. In their place, something harder emerged in her eyes. "My name is Simone. I changed my last name before I met you. From my first marriage." "First marriage?" Marcus stood up. "You told me you'd never been married before." "I was young. It was a mistake. We got divorced." James pulled up something on his phone and showed it to Marcus. Simone Marie Patterson was married to a man named David Patterson in Savannah 7 years ago. David Patterson died in a car accident 2 years into their marriage. Simone collected a $500,000 life insurance payout. The accident was investigated as suspicious, but nothing was ever proven. The room went deadly silent. I felt like I might be sick. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "You killed your first husband?" "No, the investigation cleared me. It was an accident." "Then why did you lie about being married before?" James pressed. "Why did you change your name? And why are you faking a pregnancy while plotting with another man about life insurance money? Simone stood up, her composure cracking. You don't understand. None of you understand what it's like to grow up with nothing, to claw your way up from poverty, to finally have a chance at the life you deserve. So you marry rich men and kill them for insurance money. I couldn't stay silent anymore. That's your solution. I didn't kill anyone, Simone screamed. David's death was an accident. But you were planning to kill Marcus, weren't you? James said calmly. The fake pregnancy was just stage 1. Build sympathy. Make sure he increases his insurance. Play the devoted wife. Then what? Stage an accident? Make it look like a robbery gone wrong? Who is the man you were with today? Marcus asked, his voice dead. The one helping you with whatever this is? Simone sank back onto the love seat, and for the first time, real fear crossed her face. When she spoke, her voice was small. His name is Troy. He's my boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years. 3 years? Marcus's voice rose. We've been married for 2 years. You've been cheating on me our entire marriage? I love him, Marcus. I've always loved him. But he doesn't have money. He's just a personal trainer. We needed a plan to be together, to have the life we want. So, you married me for my money, faked a pregnancy, took out a life insurance policy, and then what? What was the plan, Simone? Tell me. Simone looked at Marcus, then at me, then at James. In that moment, I saw her realize that the game was over. Whatever con she'd been running, whatever lies she'd constructed, they were all crumbling down. There's a hiking trip, she said quietly. Next month. Marcus was planning to go to Amicalola Falls with his law school friends. The trail has some dangerous spots. If he fell, if the rocks were slippery, if someone wasn't there to help him in time. Marcus made a sound, like he'd been punched in the stomach. He stumbled backward, and I rushed to his side, supporting him. You were going to push me off a cliff, he gasped. Is that what you're saying? Troy was going to follow the group. Make sure he was nearby when it happened. Make sure it looked like an accident. And the pregnancy? I asked, my voice shaking with rage. What was that supposed to be? After Marcus died, I'd announce a miscarriage. From the stress and trauma, everyone would feel terrible for me. The widow who lost both her husband and her baby. No one would question anything. I'd collect the insurance money, wait a respectable amount of time, and then Troy and I would move away. Maybe to California, start fresh. The calculated coldness of it all took my breath away. This woman had sat at my dinner table, had smiled at my family photos, had pretended to be excited about the baby gifts I'd brought. And all the while, she'd been planning my son's murder. James was already on his phone, calling someone. I need you to send a unit to 1447 Ashwood Drive. Possible conspiracy to commit murder. Suspect is present and has confessed. He paused, listening. Yes, I know I'm retired. Just send the damn unit, Patterson. Simone's eyes went wide. You can't arrest me for thinking about something. I didn't actually do anything. Conspiracy to commit murder is a crime, Simone. And insurance fraud definitely is. You're going away for a long time. Wait! Simone jumped up, her earlier composure completely shattered. We can work this out. Marcus, please, just listen. Don't you dare speak to him, I said, stepping between them. Don't you dare say another word to my son. Mrs. Jenkins, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're a monster. You used my son, lied to him, betrayed him, and planned to murder him. For money. Do you have any idea what you've done to him? To our family? Simone's face hardened again. Your family. Your perfect judgmental family. You never thought I was good enough for Marcus. I could see it in your eyes, every Sunday at dinner, the way you'd ask me about my background, my family, like you were trying to find something wrong with me. I was trying to get to know my daughter-in-law. You were trying to protect your precious son from the girl from the wrong side of town. Well, guess what? You were right. I'm not good enough for your world. I never was. But I was smart enough to figure out how to take what I wanted from it. Marcus finally found his voice. How could you do this? I loved you. I gave you everything. You gave me your name and your money, Marcus, but you never really saw me. You saw a beautiful woman you could show off at your firm's parties. You saw someone who fit the image of what a successful lawyer's wife should be. But you never asked what I wanted, what I dreamed about. So you dreamed about killing me? I dreamed about being free, about not having to pretend anymore, about being with someone who actually wants me, not just the idea of me. The doorbell rang, and James went to answer it. 2 police officers entered, and I watched as they read Simone her rights. She didn't fight, didn't cry anymore. She just stared at Marcus with something that might have been regret or might have been hatred. I couldn't tell. What about Troy? One of the officers asked. He's probably at the gym where he works, Simone said flatly. Premier Fitness on Piedmont. He doesn't know I told you anything. He'll be there until closing. As they led Simone out in handcuffs, she turned back one last time. Marcus, I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted a different life. Then she was gone, and we were left standing in the ruins of what had once been my son's marriage. The next few days were a blur of police statements, lawyer meetings, and late-night conversations, where Marcus would break down crying in my arms, like he was a little boy again. James's connections in the police department kept us informed. Troy had been arrested at the gym, and when confronted with Simone's confession, he'd immediately started talking, trying to cut a deal. He confirmed everything: the fake pregnancy, the insurance scheme, the planned accident at Amicalola Falls. What we learned made everything worse. Troy and Simone had been planning this for over a year, since before Marcus and Simone even got married. They'd specifically targeted Marcus, a young, successful lawyer with no siblings and a widowed mother, someone who was trusting, kind, and vulnerable after losing his father. They'd met at a charity fundraiser where Simone had volunteered, knowing it would be attended by wealthy, eligible Black professionals. She'd played the part perfectly, beautiful, charming, educated enough to fit in, but with a humble backstory that made Marcus want to protect her. She'd told him she was an orphan who'd worked her way through college. In reality, her parents were alive and well in Savannah, and she'd attended college for 1 semester before dropping out. The ultrasound pictures she'd shown us, downloaded from the internet, the doctor's appointments, she'd gone alone, claiming Marcus was too busy with work, and had simply described fake visits in vivid detail. The pregnancy app on her phone, all for show. She'd even researched pregnancy symptoms and faked morning sickness in the early weeks. And David Patterson, her first husband? The police had reopened that investigation. His car had gone off a bridge on a rainy night, and while it had been ruled an accident, there were inconsistencies in Simone's statement. She'd claimed to be home that night, but a neighbor had seen her car leaving around the time of the accident. But the worst revelation came a week after Simone's arrest. Marcus was going through the townhouse, packing up his belongings and preparing to move back to my house temporarily. In the back of Simone's closet, behind her expensive shoes and designer purses, he found a locked box. Inside the box was a journal. Marcus brought it to me that evening, his hands shaking as he set it on my kitchen table. "Mom, I can't read any more of this, but I think you should see it." The journal was Simone's planning notebook. Page after page detailed her strategy: how to meet wealthy men, how to assess their assets, how to build trust, how to manipulate emotions. There were notes on Marcus specifically. Target is lonely after father's death. Mother is overprotective, but can be won over with displays of affection and respect. Target values family and tradition. Use this. But the entry that broke my heart was dated 3 days after their wedding. Successfully married, MJ today. The ceremony was beautiful, and the mother cried with joy. Almost felt guilty for a moment, watching her welcome me into the family. She has no idea what's coming, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. Stay focused on the goal. 2 years of playing the devoted wife, then one tragic accident, and T and I are set for life. The pregnancy angle will start in year 2, makes the whole situation more sympathetic, and gives a solid reason for increased insurance. I closed the journal and wept. Not for the first time that week, but perhaps the hardest. This woman had seen my son's grief over losing his father and had used it as a weapon. She'd seen my love for Marcus and had exploited it. She'd calculated every smile, every kind word, every gesture of affection, and we'd believed her. The trial took place 8 months later. Marcus had filed for an annulment immediately after Simone's arrest, and it had been granted within weeks once the full extent of the fraud was revealed. Simone was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and several counts of theft by deception. The courtroom was packed. The story had made national news. The fake pregnancy, the murder plot, the cold calculation of it all had captured the public's imagination. I sat behind Marcus in the gallery, my brother James on one side and my sister Clara on the other. My church community had rallied around us, but I still felt the weight of shame. How had I not seen through Simone's act? How had I let this woman into our family? The prosecution presented their case methodically. They showed the fake ultrasound pictures, the prosthetic belly that police had found in Simone's car, text messages between Simone and Troy planning the accident, the journal entries. Troy, who'd taken a plea deal, testified about the entire scheme, detailing how they'd planned to push Marcus off the trail during the hiking trip, making it look like he'd slipped on wet rocks. Simone's defense tried to claim she'd never intended to go through with it, that it was all fantasy, that the journal was just a creative writing project. But the evidence was overwhelming. When it was Marcus's turn to testify, I held my breath. He walked to the stand with his head high, his father's strength evident in every step. He told the jury about falling in love with Simone, about how happy he'd been when she'd announced the pregnancy, about the gifts he'd bought, the nursery he'd set up, the names they'd chosen. "I would have died for that baby," Marcus said, his voice breaking, "for what I thought was my child, and she knew that. She used my love against me. She used my dreams against me." The defense attorney cross-examined him, trying to paint him as a controlling husband who drove Simone to desperate measures. But Marcus remained calm. "I wasn't perfect," he admitted. "I worked long hours. I probably didn't give her enough attention. But I never raised my hand to her. I never screamed at her. I never controlled her money or her choices. I loved her. And if she was unhappy, she could have divorced me. She didn't have to plot my murder." When it was Simone's turn to testify, she took a different approach than her lawyers had advised. Instead of maintaining her innocence, she looked directly at Marcus and spoke. "I'm not going to lie anymore," she said. "I did everything they said I did. I faked the pregnancy. I planned the accident. I was going to take your insurance money and disappear with Troy. She paused, tears streaming down her face. But I want you to know something, Marcus. Somewhere along the way, it stopped being just a con. I started to care about you. Not enough to stop the plan, apparently, but enough that I would lie awake at night hating myself for what I was going to do. That's not love, Marcus said from the gallery. That's guilt, and it wasn't enough to make you stop. No, Simone agreed. It wasn't, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Simone was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Troy received 15 years for his cooperation. The reopened investigation into David Patterson's death also resulted in charges, though that trial was still pending. As they led Simone away in handcuffs, she looked back at Marcus one last time. I couldn't read her expression. Regret, resignation, relief that the lies were finally over. Marcus didn't look back. The year that followed was one of the hardest of our lives. Marcus moved back into my house, unable to bear living in the townhouse where he'd been deceived so completely. He threw himself into his work, taking on the most challenging cases, staying at the office until midnight most nights. I worried about him. He'd lost weight. He barely smiled. He went through the motions of living without really being alive. My church family tried to help, setting him up on dates with nice girls from good families. But Marcus wasn't ready. Every time a woman showed interest, I could see the walls go up in his eyes. Trust, once broken so completely, doesn't heal quickly. It was during this time that I had my own reckoning. One Sunday after service, Pastor Williams pulled me aside. "Sister Dorothy, I've been meaning to talk to you. How are you really doing?" I gave him the same answer I gave everyone. "I'm fine. I'm just worried about Marcus." "And who's worried about you?" The question caught me off guard. I'm managing." "Dorothy, you experienced a trauma too. You were betrayed by someone you'd welcomed into your family. You were planning to be a grandmother, and that dream was ripped away. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be angry." For the first time in months, I let myself cry in front of someone. Pastor Williams sat with me in his office while I sobbed, releasing all the pain and anger and confusion I'd been holding inside while trying to be strong for Marcus. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," I confessed. The way she never talked about her family, how she always had an excuse when I suggested we visit her hometown, the way she'd change the subject whenever I asked about her past. I knew something was off, but I ignored my instincts because I wanted Marcus to be happy. "You wanted to trust your daughter-in-law. That's not a character flaw, Dorothy. That's love. But my distrust of her from the beginning, was that intuition, or was I being judgmental? She said, I never thought she was good enough for Marcus. Maybe she was right. Maybe I pushed her away." "Stop." Pastor Williams' voice was firm. "Don't you dare take responsibility for her choices. She didn't try to kill your son because you weren't warm enough at Sunday dinner. She did it because she's a con artist who sees people as marks instead of human beings. That's on her, not you." That conversation started my own healing process. I joined a support group for families of crime victims. I started journaling. I went back to volunteering at the elementary school where I'd been principal, finding joy in the children's laughter and innocent questions. And slowly, very slowly, life began to feel normal again. 18 months after Simone's conviction, something unexpected happened. Marcus came home from work early one afternoon, and I could immediately tell something was different. He was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in over a year. "Mom, sit down. I need to tell you something." My heart jumped. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, Something's very right. He took a deep breath. I met someone. I felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with hope. Tell me about her. Her name is Angela. She's a teacher at the elementary school, where you volunteer. You actually know her. Angela Morrison? I did know her. Angela was a third-grade teacher, warm and genuine, with a laugh that lit up any room. She'd been through her own share of heartbreak, a divorce from a husband who'd left her for a younger woman 3 years ago. She was raising 2 kids on her own, while teaching full-time and going to school for her master's degree. Angela, but she's wonderful, Marcus. How did this happen? I went to pick you up from volunteering last week because your car was in the shop, remember? And I was early, so I was waiting in the hallway. Angela's classroom door was open, and I could hear her reading to her class. She does all these different voices for the characters, and the kids were laughing so hard, and I don't know. I stood there listening, and for the first time since everything happened with Simone, I felt something other than emptiness. So you talked to her? Not that day, but I came back the next week, and the week after that, and finally, I asked her to coffee. We've been seeing each other for about a month now. I wanted to be sure before I told you. A month? Marcus Jenkins? You kept this from your mama for a month? He laughed, and the sound was like music. I know, but Mom, after everything with Simone, I needed to be sure. Not just sure about Angela, but sure about myself. Sure that I could trust again. Sure that I wasn't just falling for the first woman who was kind to me. And, are you sure? Marcus's smile softened into something more serious, more real. Angela is nothing like Simone. She's open about her past, about her ex-husband, about her struggles, about her mistakes. She brings her kids around. She talks about her family all the time. She's not trying to be perfect or impress anyone. She's just herself, and I love that about her. Love? I raised an eyebrow. Okay, maybe it's too soon to say that word. But Mom, I feel hopeful again. That's worth something, isn't it? I pulled my son into a hug, tears streaming down my face. That's worth everything, baby. Everything. Meeting Angela officially was both wonderful and terrifying. She came to Sunday dinner with her 2 children, 7-year-old Destiny and 5-year-old Isaiah. The moment they walked through my door, I was on high alert, watching for any sign of deception, any hint of ulterior motives. But Angela was exactly what Marcus had described. She was warm and real, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She brought homemade sweet potato pie and didn't try too hard to impress me. Mrs. Jenkins, thank you so much for having us, she said, her smile genuine. Marcus has told me so much about you. He says your macaroni and cheese is legendary. Well, we'll see if it lives up to the hype, I said cautiously. The children were polite and energetic, filling my house with noise and life in a way it hadn't experienced in years. Isaiah wanted to see every photo on my walls, asking questions about Marcus as a boy. Destiny helped me set the table and asked if she could say grace. Throughout dinner, I watched Angela interact with Marcus. There was an ease between them, a comfort that came from genuine friendship rather than manipulation. She teased him about his terrible dancing. He laughed at her stories about mishaps in the classroom. When Isaiah spilled his juice, she cleaned it up without fuss or embarrassment. After dinner, while the kids played in the backyard, Angela asked if she could talk to me privately. We sat on the front porch, the summer evening warm around us. Mrs. Jenkins, Marcus told me about what happened with Simone. I want you to know that I understand if you have doubts about me. If I were you, I'd be suspicious of any woman who came into Marcus's life. Her directness caught me off guard. I appreciate your honesty. I've been hurt too, Angela continued. My ex-husband cheated on me with his secretary. Every cliché in the book. And when he left me with 2 kids, a mortgage I couldn't afford, and a lot of debt he'd hidden from me. So I understand betrayal. I understand how hard it is to trust again. What made you decide to give Marcus a chance? Angela smiled. At first, I didn't want to. When he started showing up at the school every week, I thought he was just another guy looking for a rebound after a bad relationship. But then one day, Isaiah had a really bad day at school. He got in trouble for fighting, and Marcus happened to be there when I was trying to get him to the car. Isaiah was crying and screaming, and I was at my wit's end. And Marcus he sat down on the sidewalk with Isaiah and talked to him, not at him, but with him. He told Isaiah about a time he got in trouble in 3rd grade for the same thing. And somehow, he got through to my son in a way I couldn't in that moment. She wiped at her eyes. That's when I knew he was different. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't trying to show off. He just saw a kid who needed help and helped him. That's the kind of man I want in my life. In our lives. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Give me time, I said softly. It's not you I don't trust. It's my judgment. But I'm trying. That's all I ask. Over the next few months, Angela became a regular fixture in our lives. She never pushed, never demanded, never tried to replace anyone or force her way into the family. She simply showed up, consistently and authentically. One Saturday, she brought her mother to meet me. Mrs. Morrison was a retired nurse, a woman who reminded me of my own mother. Strong, faithful, no nonsense. My Angela tells me you've been cautious about welcoming her, Mrs. Morrison said, over tea in my kitchen. And I respect that. After what your son went through, you have every right to be careful. But I raised my daughter to be honest and hardworking. What you see is what you get. I can see that, I admitted, and I'm trying to let go of my fear. Fear is useful, Mrs. Morrison said. It protects us, but it can also prevent us from receiving blessings. Sometimes, the hardest thing is knowing which is which. Her words stayed with me. 2 years after Simone's conviction, an unexpected letter arrived at my house. The return address showed it was from the Women's Correctional Facility where Simone was serving her sentence. I stared at that envelope for 3 days before I opened it. Dear Mrs. Jenkins, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. You probably tore this letter up the moment you saw my name. But on the chance that you're reading this, I want to say some things I should have said at the trial, but couldn't. I'm sorry. I know those words aren't enough. They can't undo what I did or repair the damage I caused. But they're true. I've had 2 years to think about my choices, about the path I took, about the people I hurt. In here, there are no distractions, no excuses, no running away from the truth of what I am. I was raised by parents who taught me that money was everything. My father left my mother when I was 8 because she couldn't provide the lifestyle he deserved. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, and she died when I was 19, exhausted and broken. I watched her sacrifice everything, and I swore I would never be poor again. I swore I would never let money, or the lack of it, control my life. But somewhere along the way, I became the thing I hated. I became like my father, seeing people as resources instead of human beings. I justified everything by telling myself I was just surviving, just doing what I had to do. That's not true. I had choices. I could have gotten an education. I could have worked hard and built a legitimate life. But I wanted the shortcut. I wanted the easy path, and I destroyed lives because of it. I think about Marcus every day. I think about the man he was, kind, generous, trusting. I think about how he looked at me on our wedding day, like I was the most precious thing in the world. And I knew, even then, that I didn't deserve that look. But I took it anyway. I think about you, too, Mrs. Jenkins. You welcomed me into your family. You shared your stories, your history, your Sunday dinners. You tried to love me as a daughter, and I repaid you by planning to murder your son. There's a chaplain here who's been working with me. She says that God can forgive anything if we truly repent. I want to believe that. I'm trying to believe that. But some days, I can't imagine ever forgiving myself. I'm not writing this to ask for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability, and I need to acknowledge the harm I caused without making excuses. I destroyed David Patterson's family. I destroyed Marcus's trust and innocence. I stole from you the joy of becoming a grandmother, at least for that moment. I betrayed every kindness you showed me, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. If there's anything I hope comes from this nightmare, it's that Marcus finds happiness again. Real happiness, not the fake version I gave him. He deserves a woman who will love him for who he is, not what he has. He deserves children and a family that's built on truth. And you deserve to be the grandmother you dreamed of being. I pray that happens for both of you. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did. I understand the magnitude of my betrayal, and I am truly, deeply sorry. Simone. I read that letter 3 times, feeling a complicated mixture of emotions. Anger, because words on a page couldn't undo the trauma she'd caused. Sadness, because I could hear the genuine remorse beneath the words. And something else, something that might have been the very beginning of forgiveness, though I wasn't ready to admit it yet. I showed the letter to Marcus. He read it silently, his face unreadable. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think she's probably sincere," Marcus said slowly. "Prison has a way of forcing people to face themselves. But Mom, even if she's sorry, even if she's changed, it doesn't erase what she did. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting." "Are you going to respond to her?" Marcus shook his head. "No, that chapter of my life is closed. I don't wish her harm, but I don't need to engage with her either. I'm focused on my future now, on Angela and the kids, on building something real." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd be able to forgive Simone fully. But for now, it was enough to acknowledge her apology and move forward with my own life. 6 months later, Marcus proposed to Angela. He did it simply and beautifully, at the elementary school where they'd met, with her children and her students present. Destiny and Isaiah held signs that said, "Will you marry our friend Marcus?" And Angela cried and said yes immediately. The wedding took place in our church, the same church where Marcus had been baptized as a baby, the same church where we'd held Robert's funeral, the same church that had supported us through the nightmare with Simone. But this time, everything was different. Angela's dress was simple and elegant. Her children stood with her at the altar, Destiny as junior bridesmaid and Isaiah as ring-bearer. Her mother sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes. My brother James walked Angela down the aisle, having bonded with her over their shared love of detective novels. And when Pastor Williams asked if anyone objected to the marriage, there was only joyful silence. I watched my son marry Angela, and this time I had no doubts. No quiet concerns, no reservations, because this time I was witnessing something real. Two broken people who'd found healing in each other, two families joining together, two children gaining a father who would love and protect them. When Marcus said his vows, his voice was strong and clear. Angela, you taught me how to trust again. You showed me that love doesn't have to be complicated or calculated. It can just be simple and true. I promise to honor you, to respect you, to be a father to Destiny and Isaiah, and to build a life with you based on honesty and faith. I will never take your love for granted. Angela's vows were equally moving. Marcus, you came into my life when I'd given up on finding love again. You showed my children what a good man looks like. You showed me that it's possible to heal from betrayal and open your heart again. I promise to always be honest with you, to support your dreams, to make you laugh when times are hard, and to love you with everything I have. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. At the reception, held in the church fellowship hall, I found myself standing with Angela's mother, watching the newlyweds dance. Your son is a good man, Mrs. Morrison said. Your daughter is a blessing, I replied. They've both been through so much. They deserve this happiness. Yes, I agreed. Yes, they do. Later that evening, Angela pulled me aside. Mom, can I call you Mom? I felt tears spring to my eyes. I would love that. I want you to know something. I know I'm not giving you your first grandchild. I know Destiny and Isaiah aren't Marcus's biological children, but they love him and he loves them, and I hope you can love them too. I pulled her into a tight hug. Angela, those children have already stolen my heart. Isaiah calls me Grandma Dorothy. Destiny asks me about my recipes. They are my grandchildren, as surely as if I'd been there the day they were born. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for loving my son. A year later, Angela announced she was pregnant. This time, there were no doubts, no fears, no fake bellies, just pure, uncomplicated joy. I went with her to every doctor's appointment, holding her hand during ultrasounds, crying when we heard the heartbeat for the first time. Marcus was present for everything, but he also made sure I was included, knowing how much I needed this, to experience the journey of pregnancy as it was meant to be experienced. When Angela went into labor, Marcus called me at 2 a.m. I arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes, still in my house slippers. 13 hours later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. They named her Grace Dorothy Jenkins. As I looked down at that tiny, perfect face, I thought about everything we'd been through to get to this moment. The betrayal, the lies, the fear, the healing, the learning to trust again. She's beautiful, I whispered. Just like her grandmother, Marcus said, putting his arm around me. Angela, exhausted but glowing, smiled from the hospital bed. We want you to know something, Mom. This baby girl is going to grow up hearing stories about her grandmother, about how you protected our family, how you loved fiercely, how you persevered through pain. She's going to know that she comes from a line of strong women who don't give up. And strong men too, Marcus added. Dad's strength lives on in this family. His values, his faith, his integrity. I looked at my son, this man who had every reason to become bitter and cynical, but had chosen healing and hope instead. I looked at Angela, who had faced her own betrayal, and still opened her heart to love again. I looked at Destiny and Isaiah, who'd come to the hospital straight from school and were now pressed against the window of the nursery, waving at their baby sister. And I looked at Grace, this tiny miracle who represented new beginnings and second chances. Your great-grandfather would have loved you so much, I told Grace softly, and I'm going to make sure you know him through stories and love. 2 years have passed since Grace was born. We've added another grandchild, a boy named Robert, after my late husband. Destiny is in middle school now, excelling in everything she does. Isaiah has decided he wants to be a lawyer like his stepdad. And me, I'm busier than I've ever been, babysitting, attending school plays, hosting Sunday dinners that are louder and messier and more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Sometimes people ask me how I moved past what Simone did, how I learned to trust again, how I didn't let fear and suspicion poison my relationship with Angela. The truth is complicated. I didn't just get over it. Some wounds don't fully heal. They scar, and the scars remain sensitive. There are still moments when I catch myself watching too carefully, questioning too deeply, looking for cracks in the foundation. But I've learned some things through this journey. First, I learned that intuition matters. Those quiet concerns I had about Simone weren't me being judgmental. They were my instincts trying to protect my family. I should have trusted them more. I should have asked harder questions. Not because I should have been suspicious of everyone, but because love and wisdom aren't opposites. You can love someone and still set healthy boundaries. Second, I learned that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. It nearly destroyed Marcus. It could have made him cynical and closed off forever. But he chose healing over bitterness. He chose to believe that Simone's actions said everything about her and nothing about his worth. That choice, to remain open to love despite being hurt, took more courage than anything else he's ever done. Third, I learned that not everyone who comes into your life means you well. Some people are takers. Some people see others as resources to be exploited, and no amount of love or kindness will change them. The best thing you can do is recognize them early and protect yourself and the people you love. Fourth, I learned that real love looks different from fake love. Real love is consistent. Real love doesn't hide its past or avoid difficult conversations. Real love brings people together rather than isolating them. Real love shows up even when it's inconvenient. Angela demonstrated all of this from the beginning, but I was so traumatized by Simone's deception that I almost missed it. And finally, I learned that forgiveness is a process, not an event. I'm still working on forgiving Simone. Some days I'm there, understanding that hurt people, that she was a product of her own trauma and choices. Other days, I'm angry all over again at what she almost took from us. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't about her. It's about me. It's about not letting her actions continue to poison my present and future. It's about releasing the burden of hatred so I can fully embrace the blessings in my life. I still have Simone's letter in a drawer. I've never responded to it, and I probably never will. But I don't wish her harm. I hope she finds genuine redemption in prison. I hope she gets the help she needs to understand why she became the person she became. And I hope, truly hope, that when she's released someday, she'll have changed enough that she won't hurt anyone else the way she hurt us. If you're reading this story and you've been betrayed, I want you to know something. Your story doesn't have to end in bitterness. You get to choose what comes next. You can choose to let the betrayal define you, or you can choose to let your response to it define you. You can choose to close your heart forever, or you can choose to heal and open it again to people who've proven themselves worthy. You can choose to remain a victim, or you can choose to become a survivor. And if you're reading this story and you see yourself in Simone, If you're using people, if you're lying to get ahead, if you're calculating how to manipulate the trust of someone who loves you, please stop. Please get help. Please understand that no amount of money is worth losing your soul. No material success is worth the guilt and shame that will eventually catch up to you. There's always time to change. There's always time to choose a different path. But the longer you wait, the more damage you do, to others and to yourself. As for me, I'm sitting in my living room right now, watching Marcus help Isaiah with his homework, while Angela nurses Robert and Destiny teaches Grace how to sing. The house is loud and chaotic, and filled with a joy that almost didn't happen. Almost. But Grace, both the baby and the concept, showed up anyway. And for that, I am eternally grateful. What do you think happened? Would you have been able to forgive Simone? How would you have handled this situation if it happened to your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that touch the heart and challenge the soul. Have you or someone you know experienced betrayal like this? How did you heal? Let's build a community of support in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.